And my keynote will be based on the experience that we have from Nigeria in Kano State, which is 1,342 kilometers from any fiber landing station or any data center that's available around the area. And even the internet exchange point is based in Lagos. Then they have formed an internet exchange in Abuja, which is 450 kilometers away from Kano State. So it's a rural, underdeveloped state, and the operation is not straightforward sometimes. Network is, I don't have it, okay. From infrastructure to operations. This one is a route of how the network infrastructure should be formed from our experience as well. This is a practical guide that we have formed. You have the operating context, that what have changed between the legacy ISP, WISP operations, modern architecture in terms of access, POP, core network, transit, peering, cloud, and content. Then comes some operators, they are using hybrid access reality. That's fiber to the house, point-to-point and point-to-multipoint radio connectivity. And most importantly, the operational discipline in terms of monitoring, NOC workflow, power, security, and automation with the evolution of AI. Then we'll talk about the readiness checklist for any ISP, if the time permits. Why this matters at AFNOC Day? Because the AIS 2026 has a theme about a resilient internet ecosystem for an innovative digital Africa. AFNOC Day brings to the operator and community into the same room engineers, ISPs, internet exchange points, researchers, content network, and institution. The operator question will be, can the network absorb failure, growth, attacks, power loss, fiber cuts, and customer demand without becoming a daily emergency? Because in the days that we are living, on daily basis, we have DDoS attacks. In some regions, we have fiber cuts, frequent power outages, among other constraints. The answer will be, everything should be treated as a single package. You have to structure the internet service provider network as a full package that combines all those threats together, and you have response for it. Without that, there will be a failure on your network. This is from our experience as well. When we first started the company, maybe as any other WISP or any other ISP, we started with 2 routers, 1 switch, and a bunch of access points that were MikroTik 19S, manned box, and a bunch of LIG5 radios. That's how we started back in 2016. After 11 years, as the technology has evolved, we are using now hybrid network between fiber and point-to-point, point-to-multipoint radio connectivity with backhaul on both. The backhaul between our POPs, the way that we designed it is divided into backhaul via radio and backhaul via fiber for full redundancy. In case you have fiber cut somewhere, your POP will not be down for all the time. So the hybrid access footprint will be a metro fiber and fiber to the house connectivity or enterprise fiber, point-to-point backhaul and enterprise links, point-to-multipoint, that's the last mile that you're going to provide to your clients. A modernization path can go earlier, flexible MikroTik radio, as I said, And the operating environment, the power stability, site security is part of the availability. Middle mile and IP transit capacity constrain growth. Some ISPs, they face problems with the middle mile. That is the transit between the landing station or the data center where you want to connect to your POP, to your core BTS. Some constraints are available in some regions in terms of capacity, in terms of availability, in terms of method of availability. Some upstream providers will provide only via radio. Some will provide via radio and fiber as well as a hybrid connectivity. And some will just tell you that we can provide the fiber at a very high cost. Local peering is also important. Like, for instance, in our case in Kano State, we have the Internet Exchange Point of Nigeria, which is a layer 2 connection between Kano State and Abuja. Old ISP methods are no longer fit in this era because cybersecurity has evolved. On a daily basis, you have DDoS attacks. If there are frequent outages in terms of internet connectivity, in terms of power failures as well, in terms of fiber cuts, you should have the tools and the means to monitor and to respond and to audit and to have a post-mortem report. What is the cause of the failure? How did you treat it? And what are the measures that you have taken? And what are the next steps that you can take to avoid such maybe fiber cuts or outages on your network? So it is a dual stack. When we first started the WISP, we started only with a single provider. If later on we realized that a single provider is not enough, so we started to add upstream providers as well to our network. So it's always safe to have like 2 or more ISP upstream providers on your network for redundancy. Multiple upstream and if possible also multiple IX. And telemetry is very important for monitoring, like SNMP, flow, syslog, and probes. Capacity planning and the latency. Latency is what makes our internet fast. It's not usually only the speed, it's the latency. And incident workflow with postmortems and runbooks. Security and power designed into the topology. Otherwise, one day you will wake up with a DDoS attack, which we have experienced in 2021. And the whole network was down, then we have found a solution. The architecture of the modern network operator The modern ISP is a system of systems. It's no longer just to provide a radio connection or a fiber connection and you deploy your links in isolation. It starts from the customer, their need, and what type of customers you are serving, whether it is small and medium enterprises, whether it is a campus, it's a hospital, or it's a home, a residence. Then you have the access. How would the customer access this network? We start from the bottom route, not from top down. How customers will have the access to this network? Is it through a radio or fiber is available there? Is it going to be through a CPE with Wi-Fi or enterprise radio? Then comes the POP and aggregation. You have POPs. The more from experience, the more you are closer to your customers, the better the service will be. So we try to deploy POPs as much as possible at closer distance as possible to the customer base where we are serving, That in terms of OLT switches, towers, ODF, patching, backhaul, power, and OOB. Then you have the IP core network, which is the BGP or the OSPF. From our experience, we are just using BGP between our POPs and even with our upstream, we are no longer relying on OSPF. CGNAT, if it is needed, you don't want to deploy static IP to every one of your clients. IPv6 is very important, and we have recently finished deployment of IPv6 on our network, and it's giving us a good experience. You might have, as an ISP, a constraint with your upstream. Again, maybe they are not IPv6 ready. Maybe their equipment doesn't allow IPv6 peering. and maybe they don't even have a plan for the IPv6. They can peer with you, but there is no traffic coming out on the IPv6. After all of that comes the interconnection, which is the IP transit and the local exchange, internet exchange points or content delivery networks if they are available in your area. And on top of all of that, we have the services and the operations. That's in terms of technicalities of radio services, DNS. If you are hosting your own DNS, we are relying on our own DNS and the Whalebone also as a product. I'm not advertising for anybody here or doing any marketing. I'm just speaking out of experience. We are relying on Whalebone as a first response to our local network security. And then comes the most important part of your network, which is the ticketing system. That's the communication between you and your clients. Hybrid access. With the increasing demand of of speed and low latency from after the COVID in Kano State, where we are operating, we had to go fiber. There was no any other option that we can deliver radio network unless we will create more POPs, which means more expensive equipment and more infrastructure investment. So the wise move was to go with the fiber infrastructure. Fiber access is better than radio in terms of more stability and more latency, because every access point that you are using has a limited capacity of clients that you can connect to it. And with such limited capacity, you might be ending up using too many access points on the same tower, which will create a self-interference on your own tower. This is something we have experienced and we have tried to avoid. So with the fiber access, all GPON and XGS-PON design between splitters, radios, ODF discipline, OTDR baselines, always test your network, make sure that the power is very low, is operational, everything is optimal. And then you have the wireless access in terms of point-to-point, point-to-multi-point, which require link budgets. How many access points do you have? How many customers you can connect to those access points? And what's the actual speed that you can provide to those customers connected to those access points? Not a marketing promise, just be realistic, budget your capacity very well and try to distribute it reasonably so that your client will feel comfortable using your internet. Then comes the enterprise links, which are dedicated, and residential as well for houses and peak hour. You can design it based on the peak hour usage. Maybe during the day period, you don't have a high capacity of utilization from every home, but usually at night, the capacity will increase. So when we are budgeting for the link capacity, we use the peak hour to budget for such capacities. From flexible radio networks to capacity engineered wireless. Earlier stage, we had flexible deployment, low cost, quick activation, MikroTik radios useful for early growth, and flexible field deployment. I know some engineers, they are still deploying MikroTik now in some states in Nigeria that they are in the rural areas. But very soon, I trust, they will start to change their mode of deployments. Scaling stage, after the earlier stage, there will come the scaling stage. That is engineered wireless. Higher capacities will demand higher capacity radios. Higher capacity demand by clients will require higher backhaul radios and higher point-to-point radios or point-to-multi-point. And then comes the operating rule that we believe in. Wireless must be treated as a scarce spectrum asset. We are operating on the free spectrum in Kano State. We don't have our own frequency, and likewise every other operator. So you have to budget also your frequency properly so that you don't create self-interference on your own towers. Fiber deployment is a life chain cycle. It's not only just to dig or erect poles and run your fiber and everything is going to be okay. It's a life cycle. It starts from survey and design, from permission and right of way, building the fiber, then testing and documentation, and then operational of the fiber in order to have a resilient fiber, because sometimes with too many fiber cuts, you will end up on high power, high dBm on some areas or segments which will affect the quality of the capacity or the bandwidth that you are providing at a certain point. Early POP is a miniature data center. We have the rack and physical order, the power system, the transport, the management, the monitoring, and the security. And in monitoring also we have to monitor in Kano State the temperature and the power as well, because temperature can be up to 43 degrees Celsius in Kano State, sometimes 44, sometimes 45, it depends on the weather. So temperature is very essential and ventilation is very essential on the POPs there. Core network must be boring. In fact, everything about ICT is boring sometimes, and predictable and policy driven. In terms of POP, in terms of the core network, you have the core network where you have the BGP and the IGP dual stack, or maybe more. In our case, we are using like 4 upstream. In Kano State, 3 upstream in Abuja, and in some northern states, we are using 2 to 3 upstream in certain states. So it's a collection between the core network, the transit, the internet exchange, and the POPs and the NOC services. The hardest bottleneck in terms of our reality of operation was not the last mile, it was the middle mile. How to bring capacity from Lagos State to Kano State. This middle mile is always a bottleneck, and sometimes operators doesn't pay close attention to it, because by the time your network is growing and your bandwidth capacity requires an update, that's where you will hit this wall and you start thinking, I didn't plan for this. So always when you are connecting with an upstream provider, please ask them, on the next upgrade that I want, maybe I have 2 gig capacity from you, I need 4 gig. Are you still going to be able to deploy it on a radio, or it's only fiber? Do you have the capacity on the same POP? Because we ran into such failures and such problems, and we had to change almost all of our topology for the last mile that we have with our upstream providers. Internet exchange points are very essential. They have given us very good experience in terms of latency and in terms of predictability of the network as well, because we offloaded most of our traffic in terms of Google, Meta, and other services that are provided by the IXP in Kano State, that's the IXPN, into the IXPN local content, and the latency has reduced, and we had more capacity from our upstream at that point of time. Recently, I believe after Ghana at that time, we spoke about IPv6, and we started the deployment of IPv6 on our network. Luckily enough, after 3 years of fight with our upstream providers, IPv6 was available only from 1 among 3 upstream that we have in Kano State, and from IXPN as well. So we started peering on IPv6, and we can monitor our traffic going through the IPv6. That's about it for the IPv6. And then the operational layer, the DNS, the AAA readiness, abuse handling and logs, NMS dashboard by protocol family, peering database. You always have to update your peering database data there, and you measure real IPv6 traffic share. It's not only about being ready for IPv6. You have to monitor whether or not your traffic is actually going through the IPv6 route that you have created for your network. Amin, we are out of time. Okay, that's it. I will leave it here, and thank you very much because of time.